any of their own laws. You see, trial were not to be held during feast time, and every member of the court was to vote individually to convict or acquit on a case. But the trials Jesus went through was different. He was convicted by acclamation. And only a few hours later, he was sentenced to death and placed on a cross. He had no representation at his trial, none. The trials before the Roman authorities started with Pilate after Jesus was beaten. The charges brought against him were very different from the charges in his religious trials. Here he was charged with inciting people to riot, forbidding the people to pay their taxes, and claiming to be king. My Jesus had been ridiculed, and to satisfy the animosity of the Jews, Jesus was scourged. A terrible whipping of 39 lashes. In a final effort to have Jesus released, Pilate offered the prisoner, Barabbas, to be crucified, and Jesus released. But to no avail.